Sons and Lovers as a novel is a subtle demonstration of Oedipus Complex. Greetings, literary aspirants. The voice of Asad Imran greets you on the assimilators. Let's dig right into Oedipus Complex in Sons and Lovers. Warning: this question may contain references to explicit imagery, so it is only intended for audience above 18. Introduction. Sons and Lovers is one of the controversial novels by David Herbert Lawrence that hit the shelves in 1930, the very time when Sigmund Frieud was experimenting with his new theory, Oedipus Complex. This novel is based on the concept of Oedipus Complex. But before jumping into a lengthy discussion of Oedipus Complex in Sons and Lovers, first we have to make ourselves acquainted with the story and the term itself. The story of Sons and Lovers revolves around a lady named Gertrude who is enchanted by the hard-working caricaturing of a coal miner known as Walter Morel. Their marriage is marked by a psychological turmoil and she detests her husband because of his bad tone and excessive drinking. Gertrude tries hard to find love in her elder son, William, but he dies. She then shifts her attention to her other son, Paul, but the consequences of this relationship comes at the cost of Paul not mixing with the girls of his age. Oedipus Complex. Oedipus Complex is a psychological theory presented by Sigmund Frieud. The theory is based upon a classical Greek tragedy on a Theban king known as Oedipus, who unknowingly killed his father and married his mother and got children from her. But Freud uses this myth to illustrate the subconscious desire of having an unnatural relationship with the opposite gender of one's parents. This psychological complex can be defined as thus. Oedipus complex is a state in which a person shows excessive affection for the parent opposite in gender to him or herself and a corresponding distaste for his or her other parent. In simple terms, Oedipus complex is an unnatural relationship of love between a son and his mother while detesting his father or vice versa. Let's explore about the same complex in Sons and Lovers by David Herbert Lawrence. Autobiographical complex. Lawrence's life was itself a complex matter of psychological limitations. His mother, Lydia, was in love with a school teacher, but she could not continue her relationship with him. Later, she found Arthur Lawrence, a coal miner, and was married to him. But their marriage life proved to be a glaring failure. Lydia could not receive the amount of love that she expected from Arthur. That is why she turned her affections to her elder son, but he kicked the bucket. Then she turned to D.H. Lawrence, and he was enthusiastically attached to his mother. So he rejected Jessie's proposal, the one who helped Lawrence emerge as a writer. Sons and Lovers is the most accurate representation of Lawrence's autobiographical complications, and the characters of the novel do seem to parallel each other. Thus, it is evident that Lawrence had developed an Oedipus complex towards his mother and against his father. That is clearly visible in this novel. Relationship between Paul and Mrs. Morel. The relationship between Paul and Mrs. Morel was not like a natural bond that naturally exists between a mother and her son, but the relationship was more than an ordinary relationship. Gertrude was seeing Paul as a substitute to her husband, who had failed in providing her sexual as well as psychological needs. The relationship between the two grew stronger when Paul was attacked by pneumonia and she nursed him with, quote, great care, just because she didn't want to lose her other son. The incidents showcasing their unnatural love shock us, but it was one of Gertrude's weapons to show her hatred towards her husband through Oedipus complex. For example, in chapter 8, Mrs. Morel expresses her lack of control on her husband to Paul as thus, quote, and I have never, Paul, I never had a husband, not really. To comfort his mother, Paul comes ahead and, well, I have to censor this line. You can already read it on the screen. I shall be skipping this section, but you can read it on your own. and continue to the next one. Paul's relationship with Miriam and Clara Dales. Paul is unable to maintain the balance between his beloveds out of the strong influence of his mother over him. As for Miriam, she was a religious minded girl, but as she would try to kiss his hand, he would withdraw it back abruptly. As for Clara Daves, she is hungry for having sex that Paul is unable to satisfy. He indeed loved both, but he was not in the mood of marrying them. He explained his reasons to his mother as thus, quote, I shall never meet the right woman while you live. End quote. This quote vividly demonstrates how well he is glued to his mother because of their Oedipus complex. Conclusion. Freud gave his theory of the Oedipus complex in 1912, thus making Sons and Lovers the first novel to showcase Oedipus complex in action. But it must be noted that Freud's theory did not motivate Lawrence to align his story to the very theory, but he had experienced the very phenomenon in his own life all by himself. Sources used for this video are now being displayed.